I found a letter after my dad's funeral that said my mom wasn't my mom. Then I discovered a hidden card that changed everything. I think there's something you need to see, my daughter Ava whispered, holding out a small blue envelope, her hands trembling. It was the day after my father's funeral. Family still lingered in the house, laughing too loud, eating too much, pretending like grief hadn't soaked into the walls. But Ava, 15, too observant for her own good, was the only one who noticed I hadn't spoken to anyone since yesterday. I took the envelope with a nod, noting the name scribbled on the front, "To Kevin if I'm gone." My father's handwriting. Messy, slanted, unmistakable. I sat down at the kitchen table where just 2 days ago we'd sat over bad coffee and hospice paperwork. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet, folded in thirds. No preamble. No signature. Just 22 words. Your mother wasn't your mother. Her name was Denise. Ask Paul about the car. He'll know what that means. That was it. My brain stalled. My mother wasn't my mother? Who the hell was Denise? And Paul? Paul who? My father didn't have friends named Paul. At least, not that I knew of. I read it again. Then a third time. The words didn't change. When I looked up, Ava was still standing there, watching me like I might spontaneously combust. Where did you find this? I asked. In the glove box, she said quietly. Of your old truck. I was getting gum. The truck. My dad's old '88 Ford Bronco that he never let anyone drive, not even me. The same one parked half-rusted in the backyard. That glove box had been locked for years. Denise. Paul. The car. My whole body buzzed with adrenaline, the kind you get when you realize your entire life may have been based on a lie. And I had to ask myself, did I even want the truth? I didn't say anything to Ava. I just got up, grabbed the keys, and stepped out into the cold spring air. The Bronco was exactly where it had always been, tilted slightly on the gravel behind Dad's old shed, hood dusted with pollen and tree sap, one tire flat. I opened the door. The cabin smelled like mildew, motor oil, and the vague trace of his cologne, Brute, the only brand he'd ever worn. The glove box was still slightly ajar from Ava's rummaging. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the dashboard. Your mother wasn't your mother. Denise. Paul. The car. It didn't make sense. My mom died when I was 10. Cancer, they said. Lung. The last thing I remembered was sitting at the edge of her hospice bed, watching her chest rise and fall until it didn't. She was thin. Gentle. Her hand had been cold when I kissed it goodbye. That was my mother. Wasn't it? The glove box held nothing else besides the envelope. No photos. No registration papers. Not even the tiny Swiss Army knife he used to keep in there. But I noticed something strange. The latch inside looked tampered with. Scratched. As if someone had opened it with force. I reached under the seat and found a metal box. Gray. About the size of a lunch pail. And locked. Of course. I set it on the passenger seat and just stared at it. My heart felt too big for my chest. My father wasn't a man of riddles. He was a mechanic. Straightforward. Factual. Which made this even worse. He had waited until he was dead to say the most loaded thing I'd ever heard in my life. And now I couldn't even ask him why. That was when I heard the knock. I looked up. It was my cousin Paul. Paul. That Paul. He leaned against the shed with a cigarette in his mouth, watching me through the smoke. I was wondering when you'd read the letter, he said. I stepped out of the Bronco, clutching the letter like it might dissolve in my hand. You knew? I asked. My voice cracked somewhere between disbelief and dread. Paul nodded. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, like he'd been carrying something heavy for a long time. He asked me not to say anything until he was gone, he said. But I always hated that plan. Who's Denise? I asked, skipping right to it. Paul took a drag off his cigarette and exhaled slowly. She was your biological mother. Your dad met her in 1989. She worked at the diner off Route 7. I tried to do the math. But I was born in 91. Exactly, Paul said. Your dad was married to Laura at the time, but they'd been distant. You were born in December. Denise died in a crash the following March. I staggered back a step. A crash. Paul pointed at the Bronco. That one. She was driving it when it happened. I stared at the truck. I had learned to drive in that thing. I'd spilled sodas in the back seat. Taken it to prom. Dad always said it was family history on wheels. I never knew how literal that was. I felt like my ribs were closing in. So what, he just brought me home? And Laura raised me. Paul nodded. He never told her the truth. She thought he adopted you after Denise died. She was already dying herself by then. She didn't ask questions. But she loved me like I stopped myself. Paul didn't interrupt. He let the silence hang there, heavy and cruel. Why now? I asked finally. Why leave a note and not tell me to my face? Paul looked down at his shoes. He was afraid you'd hate him. Or worse, hate her. I sat back on the Bronco's hood, heart racing. The gravel crunched under my boots. Paul tossed his cigarette and walked over slowly. You're not the only one who's got questions, Kevin, he said. But if you want answers, you're going to have to open that lockbox. I looked down at the box in my lap. My hand shook as I traced the edge of the lid. Paul's voice was quiet when he added, You sure you want to know? I didn't answer right away. Because honestly, I didn't know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table long after Ava had gone to bed, the gray lockbox staring back at me like it held a live grenade. I tried every key in Dad's old toolbox. None fit. Thought about smashing it open, but that felt wrong, like this deserved a quieter kind of breach. Around 3 a.m. I remembered something. In the back of the garage, under a pile of rusted sockets and half-used motor oil jugs, there was a little tin marked duplicates. One dusty key had a strip of masking tape labeled spare glove. It clicked on the second try. Inside the box were 2 envelopes, a thumb drive, and a photograph. The photo was old, grainy, like it had been taken on a disposable camera. It showed a woman sitting on the hood of a red Camaro, hair wild in the wind, denim jacket hanging off one shoulder. In her arms, a newborn baby. Me. On the back, in faded pen, it read, Denise plus Kev. February 1992. I clutched the photo, my chest caving in around my breath. I didn't even know her face. I had never seen it before. I opened the first envelope. It held a birth certificate, mine. But this one listed the mother as Denise Keller. Father, John McKinney. My dad. Everything else I thought I knew, gone. The second envelope was a letter. Not handwritten like the first, but typed. Kevin, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to tell you in person. I'm sorry. I wanted to. Denise was the love of my life. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to fall in love while I was still married. But she gave me you. After she died, I couldn't bear the thought of putting you in the system. Laura was too sick to understand. She thought you were a distant cousin's orphaned baby. She accepted it. I raised you the best I could. I made mistakes. But I never regretted a second of it. Paul knows everything. He was there when Denise died. The Camaro was hers. We buried it in the barn lot because the cops were asking too many questions. There's one more thing. Look under the bed of the Bronco. You'll understand why I couldn't tell you sooner. I love you, son. Always did. Always will. Dad. Under the bed of the Bronco? I stood up so fast the chair toppled backward. I didn't even grab a coat. Just keys, flashlight, crowbar. The yard was cold, wind pushing against me like a warning. I slid under the Bronco on my back, heart hammering. The metal sheet looked newer than the rusted parts around it. Fastened with 4 bolts. I pried it off. Inside the hidden compartment, a small, velvet pouch, and a sealed envelope with a sticky note that read, Do not open unless you're ready to change everything. I took the pouch and envelope back inside, hands numb from cold and panic. My flashlight beam bounced off the walls like it was just as unsteady as I was. I poured the contents of the pouch onto the table. 3 items clinked onto the wood. A slim gold chain with a locket. A folded business card. A plastic hospital wristband, baby-sized, printed with the name Kevin McKinney, February 13th, 92. I opened the locket. Inside was a grainy photo of Denise on one side and the same baby from the Camaro photo, me on the other. My hands shook. It was like I'd been scooped out and filled with a stranger's memories. The business card read, Paul Keller, private investigator. Licensed in WVOHPA. For truth. For closure. Paul wasn't my dad's friend. He was Denise's brother. The same Paul the first knew as Uncle Paul. My father had introduced us casually like he was just another one of his garage buddies. But he'd been around since I was a kid. He even taught me how to fix carburetors. He watched me grow up. The betrayal was quiet but brutal. I turned to the final envelope. It was heavy. Not emotionally, physically. I unsealed it slowly. Inside were $10,000 in cash wrapped in paper and labeled, Start here if things go south. And 1 sheet of paper, an address in Ohio. A storage unit. Dad had a second storage space. One I never knew about. The next morning, I drove 3 hours in silence, locket in my pocket, letter burning a hole in my coat. I didn't tell Ava where I was going. Didn't call Paul either. I didn't trust him, not anymore. When I got to the unit, I handed over the ID and code scrawled in my father's handwriting. The clerk raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She handed me the key. Unit number 39. I rolled up the metal door, heart racing. Inside was a single object, the red Camaro from the photo, perfectly preserved under a dust-drenched tarp. Pinned to the windshield was a note in blue ink. The crash wasn't an accident. She was pregnant again. And someone didn't want that to come out. If you're ready to learn more, check the trunk. My breath caught. Pregnant again? Someone killed her? I stared at the car like it might lunge forward and speak. My hand hovered over the latch of the trunk. Click. It popped open with a groan like it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside the trunk were 3 items. A manila folder. A VHS tape labeled February 1992 copy. And a sealed Ziploc bag containing a crumpled leather wallet soaked with old blood. I stared at the wallet first. My brain couldn't process the full horror, but it clung to one fact: it wasn't Denise's. It was too bulky, too worn, too masculine. I opened it carefully, fingers trembling. Inside was a Virginia ID belonging to a man named Eric Houghton. I'd never heard the name before. The ID was water-damaged, blood-stained, and expired in 1993. Tucked in the billfold were 2 photos, one of Eric with Denise, arms around each other, clearly taken before I was born. The second, Eric in a hospital room holding a sonogram image. On the back, in the same handwriting as the birth certificate. Kevin's sibling. March 1992. 8 weeks. I couldn't breathe. The folder held scanned police reports. The accident was ruled single vehicle. Denise lost control on an icy curve, struck a tree, no foul play suspected. But Dad had written sticky notes all over the copies. Things like, Eric seen arguing with her at diner 2 nights before. Who called the police? No record of witness. And, most damning, blood type on passenger seat doesn't match Denise. I backed up from the trunk like it could explode. Denise had been pregnant again. Eric might have been the father, or maybe not. Either way, someone had wanted that pregnancy gone. And the VHS tape. That was the last thing I touched. I drove home like a ghost, tape on the passenger seat. When I arrived, Ava was waiting in the doorway, her face pale. Paul came by, she said. He left this. It was a note, handwritten. We need to talk. You're not the only one looking into this. And the wrong people noticed your father kept the car. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid of the truth. Because I realized, this wasn't just about family. It was about murder. I had to see what was on that tape. Borrowing a VHS player in 2025 isn't as easy as it sounds. I ended up at a thrift store 30 miles out, pretending I was just nostalgic for old movies. The guy behind the counter gave me a dusty combo TV VCR that smelled like cat pee. I didn't care. Back at home, I set it up in the garage, the one place no one would bother me. I slid in the tape. A word clicked, then the screen flickered to life. At first static, then a date, February 10th, 1992. And a shaky frame of Denise sitting at a small kitchen table in a faded blue tank top, rubbing her belly. 8 months pregnant. She looked nervous. Okay. I don't know who's watching this, she began. But if anything happens to me, this is for my baby, Kevin. And maybe the other one, too. Her voice cracked. She adjusted the camera. I'm scared, she said plainly. Eric's been following me. He knows I'm keeping the baby. He keeps saying I'm ruining everything. But I'm not giving up either child. Not Kevin. Not the one I'm carrying. She looked off screen. I've told John. He's trying to help. He says we can leave. But I don't know if we'll get the chance. The tape cut briefly. Then another clip started. This time, Denise was outside. Snow on the ground. Same red Camaro in the background. She held up a manila envelope. I left this with Paul, she said. If I'm gone, he'll know what to do. Then she lowered her voice, looked straight at the camera. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Eric will make it look like one. But it won't be. Don't let them bury the truth. The tape ended with her walking off screen. I sat frozen, hands gripping my knees so hard I thought I'd leave bruises. She knew. She knew someone was going to kill her. And everyone let it slide. The police, my dad, maybe even Paul. And now, 33 years later, I had her last words playing in a garage that smelled like rust and regret. That's when the garage door creaked open. Ava stood there, her face pale. Dad, she whispered. There's a man outside. He says his name is Eric Houghton. I moved fast, hand on Ava's shoulder, pulling her gently behind me. Get back inside, I said. Lock the door. Don't open it unless I say. She didn't argue. By the time I stepped onto the porch, Eric Houghton was already halfway up the walkway. He didn't look like a murderer. That was the first thought that punched through the fear. He looked tired. Older than his ID suggested. Gray stubble. Ball cap. a duffel slung over his shoulder like he was coming home from a long shift. He raised a hand casually. Kevin. Just hearing my name from his mouth made my skin crawl. Don't come any closer, I said. He stopped. I'm not here to hurt you, he said calmly. But I know you've been digging. Paul called me. Paul. Of course. You murdered her, I said. He didn't flinch. I tried to save her, he said. That night, Denise called me. Said she was scared, wanted to leave town. I told her I'd help. But when I got there, she was already gone. I shook my head. You expect me to believe you were just another witness? He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. I'm not innocent, he said. But I didn't kill her. And neither did your father. He paused. Paul did. The world tilted. What? He told her he had money to get her out. She trusted him. Said she'd meet him halfway up Ridge Road. He claims it was an accident. I didn't buy it then. I still don't. I couldn't breathe. Eric unzipped his duffel. I tensed. But all he pulled out was a thick manila envelope. Everything's in here, he said. The autopsy. The real one. Police files. Letters. Stuff I kept because I knew someday you'd come looking. He placed it on the porch step like it might explode. Why give it to me now? Because your dad was a good man. And Denise, she was the only person I ever loved who looked at me like I wasn't broken. I couldn't protect her. But maybe I can protect her son. Then he turned and walked away. No threats. No lies. Just truth dumped at my feet like a curse. Inside, Ava peeked through the window, eyes wide. Was that him? She whispered. Yeah, I said. That was him. And I didn't know whether to run after him or burn the whole thing down. I waited until Ava was asleep. Curled up in my bed this time, refusing to leave my side. I promised her everything was okay even if I didn't believe it. Down in the garage, I sat on the cold concrete floor and opened the envelope Eric left behind. There it was. A second autopsy, unsigned, showing inconsistencies in the reported time of death and bruising patterns. Letters from Denise to Paul begging for help and promising to keep things quiet. A bank receipt for a withdrawal of $8,000 from Paul's account 2 days before the crash. And finally, a typed statement from a former deputy, never submitted, claiming Paul pressured him to close the case quickly. I felt sick. Not just at Paul, but at Dad. He knew. He knew and kept Paul around. Let him be my uncle. Let him teach me how to fish, how to change spark plugs, how to trust. I wanted to scream. Break something. Instead, I lit a fire in the backyard. One by one, I fed the documents into the flames. Not to destroy them, but to let them go. I'd already scanned everything. I was going to the police. Let the law take its shot. But I wouldn't let this rot infect me any deeper. That night, I wrote my own letter to Ava. I told her the truth. About Denise. About who I really am. I didn't give her every ugly detail, just enough to fill in the cracks. Enough that she wouldn't find out from someone else. And then I did the hardest thing of all. I called Paul. He answered on the second ring. Kevin knew. You lied to me my entire life, I said. And now you're going to pay for it. There was silence. Then a slow exhale. I figured it might end this way. I gave him 48 hours to turn himself in. After that, I'd hand over everything. He hung up without saying another word. 2 days later, he was arrested. And a week after that, Eric was gone, left town without a trace. I didn't chase him. I didn't want anything else from him. Ava and I stood in the yard a few weeks later, looking at the Bronco. I told her we'd sell it. She looked at me thoughtful. No, she said. Keep it. Just fix it up. Turn it into something new. I smiled for the first time in weeks. She was right. I don't know what kind of legacy this is. A secret. A tragedy. A warning. But I do know this. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just hands you the keys. And you decide where to go next.